Great. Well, thanks for having me. It was a pleasure to meet at Web Summit. I always enjoy Web Summit, being there in person. It's just so, there's something in the air, and it's there for a reason. Um, but virtually, I guess has its merits as well, especially this year. Um, Before I talk about Nokia, you know, um, I heard you guys, talk about or mention how you're transitioning in your careers. And I'd say that whether or not it's your idea or your business or a small organization or a large organization, um, as long as you push forward with the principles, of ideation and innovation, it doesn't really matter where you are. It's about having that platform to really drive, let's say, authentic change. And I think that's one of the reasons that Nokia spoke to me, when I came on board. I say that because I've launched companies in New York, in China, been a part of the startup ecosystem here in Israel. But the way that the leadership of Nokia is designed, really, really is that one of empowerment. I don't know how it resonates specifically within Bell Labs, as somebody mentioned, but at least that's the Kool-Aid that I've been drinking since my time there. A lot of folks don't know that maybe the innovation hub for Nokia, at least Nokia software, and a lot of the engineering is in Israel. This very small country, and Finland also quite a small country, but we have a lot of engineering-minded and, let's say, disruptive attitudes and personalities that can really make that happen. So anyway, regarding Nokia, when you hear Nokia, what do you think of? What comes to mind? Is it your first phone in the 90s? Is it something else?
3310.
Yeah.
3310.
3310, yeah.
Yeah, no, I remember in the 90s that commercial series about, what is this? Nokia, and I think today it's still pretty much the brand we carry. Oh, you guys are still around, right? But the truth of the matter is, when folks do their homework, the company's around for over 150 years, has 9 Nobel Prizes, and even though it was a leader briefly in time, in mobile phones, and it wasn't just Nokia that fell, so to speak. It was Motorola, it was Samsung, it was everyone. Apple just had that thing that really changed our behavior. But some of the innovations that we're up to now are very much centered around the 5G economy. It's a $25 billion a year business. I would say about 80% of our business is in the hardware space. And I don't mean manufacturing hardware like a Lockheed Martin, but really, that radio technology and those base stations and all of the elements you need for a 5G standalone network. And to optimize your experience as a user as you engage within that network and whatever digital appetite you have. The other 20% is the software side. Not just having the infra in place, but if you're a company and you are, leveraging our assets so that you can be a better tech player, it's not just a matter of using, the base stations. Let's integrate it with that virtual software so that you can really take advantage of the network, so that you can monetize your users, so that you can provide a digital experience. I know it's the most overused term of, the 2020s or the 2010s, but it's not just about a marketing campaign. It's about leveraging this massively interesting network. And when we're not, busy in these domains, we've also begun inventing technology for 6G. And some of these PRs have already begun, being released in the past couple of weeks. So we have a lot of excitement happening. I'm very proud to work here. And, I just hope we can keep innovating, keep competing. We're always interested in seeing what's coming out of Huawei, what's coming out of Ericsson, what's coming out of ServiceNow, Pegasystems. There's so many great companies that are contributing to this amazing tech ecosystem that it keeps everyone, on their toes. What else can I tell you? We are very global, of course. The team that, I hate to say it like this, but the team that I manage, they're everywhere. They're in Beijing, Bangkok, Finland, of course, the US, here in Israel. It's awesome. Once upon a time, you could hop on a plane and travel somewhere and do some team building. Now we get a little more creative, as you guys probably have to as well. But yeah. So Johan says you granted a patent for Nokia yesterday. Nice. I like it. Anyway, I feel like I'm borderline rambling. So I don't know if you have more specific questions or if there's a certain area that I could address a little more specifically.
So now I'm curious about how would you see the term competition and how that has changed over time? Because I feel like when I was young, there were competing brands. And now the big players who are actually shaping the markets, they don't feel like competition anymore because they have so much overlapping activity that it feels like, hey, we're in this tech space together and we're in this problem solving space together. What's your observation of the feeling of competition? Because Nokia's competition was BenQ, Ericsson, later Sony Ericsson, Motorola, all these kinds of brands that actually don't exist anymore. And now, or at least on the cell phone market, I don't know how you see this, or on the smartphone market, maybe the feature phone market is still, I guess, dominated by Nokia. But yeah, what's your
when it comes to consumer devices, right now that part of our business is more down market. It's not primary by any means, but look, the competitive landscape has changed, I would say, in two main ways. Number one, when we're in the war rooms and we're fighting, Ericsson, Huawei, Netcracker, part of NEC out of Japan, whoever it is, we understand that we are going to have to work with them. Having a multi-vendor and multi-cloud strategy for companies that provide telecommunications, for governments, for other types of enterprises, they like to have more than one enabler on board. You don't want to give all the business to Nokia or whoever, this is something we understand. So we're working with our frenemies, and it's really, I don't want to say forced us, because I think we would go down this path anyway, but to be all in on openness, whether it's open collaboration, open source, open APIs, and it's made us, I think, a better and still improving business. I would say the second thing that's changed is, once upon a time, we were selling IT systems to enterprises. But, our enterprises really aren't enterprises anymore. They're all aspiring technology companies. I mean, can someone really say that Nike is a enterprise? Hell, they've been investing more in their, digital strategy than anyone. And this is for decades now. For those of you who remember the NikeID.com in the 90s, where you go on and you make your own shoes, and that was the tip of the iceberg for what it is now. It's a true platform. If you look at McDonald's, maybe in some, parts of the world, it will continue to be a drive-through experience, but they bought Dynamic Yield, a couple of years ago for $300 million, so that when you do drive through, that menu will be another screen that is personalized for you, that will recognize your license plate, that will give you the promotion, that helps you make a better decision in a very Amazonian way. McDonald's is an aspiring tech company, It's not just Tesla, it's these other guys that are really evolving here. And we've had to change the conversation. We are not selling you a system. We are working with you to better enable you to meet your aspirations. And we're proud to call Rakuten, you know, a customer of ours, right? Rakuten is not, you know, a telco. They're way beyond telco for all the amazing things they do, you know, in the Japanese economy. And it really is more working together. So this is something I believe passionately about. You know, I should post some of these to the Nokia blog tomorrow. I wonder if that would make for an interesting piece, but good question.
So much. So when we talk about the digital transformation, or what I see the digital transformation as a trap, but the transformation from linear to exponential organization, Nokia is an enabler for the companies to transform and stepped away from facing customers. Did I understand that right?
Well, kind of. Look, our technology is very specific, you know, and you know, we do have, let's say, 3 buckets or 3 categories of customers. When it comes, you know, to other companies that might claim to give you a digital transformation, you might think of Accenture, you might think of Salesforce, you know, you might think of Adobe, and everyone has, you know, their own assets to provide to the market. Ours is more specific to a more complex space. You know, we're not dealing with making your storefront, you know, a digital website or a digital channel. We have a lot of pipes to cover, you know, fiber, copper, wireless, and it gets a little trickier, let's say. So our transformation, it's about digitization, but it's not just about digital. It's about embracing 5G. I don't know how deeply you want to get into the subject of 5G, but this is you know, I would say our #1 focus area. If you think about what that means for an in-person event, whenever those start happening again, you know, or what that means for virtual events, or what that means for medical procedures, we're talking about slicing the network very carefully and enabling you as an organization, as an individual, to have a premium experience if you wish, right? This is what's driving our business in a way that's different than, you know, again, Accenture, Salesforce, or one of these other wonderful companies.
Maybe it indeed would be interesting and helpful to look a little into 5G, because for me personally, 5G is just high bandwidth, and I'm sure this is just, yeah, whatever. That's not what we had a conversation. I had a separate conversation with the CEO of Magenta in Austria, and he spoke about what they would turn down, which is not decided yet, if it's 2G or 3G or LTE, which one they keep and which one they turn down once 5G is established, just to have separate. So that already tells me, okay, it's not only about bandwidth, there's a lot more behind that.
Think about what it means for virtual reality as well, Nikki. The smaller headsets.
Yeah, no. So 5G, it gets used loosely, and then there's a more disciplined, explanation. So 5G kind of exists today in a way that it piggybacks on 4G. So it's kind of 5G, right? And this has been deployed in several places. 5G standalone, you know, that's pure and that has a lot of these benefits that you read so much about. This is what we're working on facilitating as different countries deploy this, you know, in the years to come. I think China's first 5G standalone call was just made a couple months ago, right? It was using our tech. We're very proud of it, but it's just the tip of the iceberg for how the world will be embracing this. Now, you might say that 5G is going to come at us in ways that we can consume, you know, societally, maybe in 3 waves. One, you know, as you mentioned, Liam, it's very much in the augmented virtual reality type space. Let's call it media, right? I could probably get more creative with that, but you know, we're talking about ultra HD, augmented, virtual, mixed reality, and having these experiences in a way that you simply can't today unless you have fiber to the home. You've seen the videos of people going to a soccer or football field with their goggles on and everything, and having at it as if they were in a video game themselves. This is a kind of experience that 5G can enable, right? There are several other use cases that are written about, whether it's in manufacturing, construction, retail, but I'm not sure I have anything additional to say beyond that. The second wave is probably in, let's call it mobility. We're talking about smart cities and smart cars and smart ports. And in order for these to function, you need, let's say, the currencies of 5G, right? One is bandwidth, one is latency, and as I list them off, it basically means a higher quality experience as you are, in the digital realm. And the easiest way to understand like the weight of it is just thinking about smart and autonomous cars, right? Up until now, there's been kind of a certain product paradigm. It's either, let's say high tech, low accuracy, or low tech, high accuracy. You're one or the other. So your smartphone is high tech, right? Low accuracy. If the call drops, no one dies. If Google Maps gets it wrong because of the location technology, you'll find it, no big deal. But conversely, when you look at aircrafts, look, the technology that the airplanes are using, it's nothing that's too different than it has been for decades, but it better be damn accurate, or a lot's at stake. So it's about having high tech and high accuracy so that you can have smart cars and autonomous cars moving on the road, smart ports making the way for ships to come in for delivery, smart cities, so that the measurements and all of the needs are met. This is that second wave, and it's already begun. We're working on projects now with smart cities all around the world. In the third wave, and I would say this is maybe more my view, because who knows what's going to happen in 2030, 2032, 2027, you pick the year, right? I think will really happen in telemedicine. And not telehealth, where you can get on Teladoc or an Amwell app and, have a session, right? This is the technology that we're using right now, with a few more bells and whistles. I'm talking about super ambulances that will go, historically you would go pick somebody up, take them to the nearest hospital and do what you can in the ambulance. But a super ambulance to where you can park anywhere. And if something is that level of an emergency, you have a physician or a surgeon or some medical professional operating because remotely, based on the amazing technology in that super ambulance. And who knows when it's going to happen? People are placing their bets. There's a lot of cool innovation happening in this area. I would say specifically in Korea and Japan, who are usually leading the pack anyway globally, right? So I encourage you to read more deeply into it, but it's only possible because of 5G, only, or foundationally.
Okay. I'm opening the floor. Anyone with a question? Johan.
Yes, very interesting what you said. And, I see so many patent applications in this field that it's just insane. Now, recently, the European Patent Office published a report about the fourth industrial revolution and, everything in that arena. So from artificial intelligence, smart cities and cloud. And what the report said is that China is like the most active in this area right now. So 30% growth over the past 5 years. Then comes, South Korea. US is still leading, but, losing ground. But in particular, Europe is really losing ground. So how do you see this emergence of China in all these technologies? Do you feel that in Nokia in some particular way?
So when you're pointing to growth, do you mean the growth in spend, the growth in patent applications, the growth in something
Yeah.
else?
This is the report was about, you know, the number of patent applications in the field, which for me relates to, you know, the amount they invest in R&D.
Yeah, well, you know, I know that I guess on one hand, you know, I'm a little surprised because I know that IP law is much looser in China, you know, compared to other parts of the world. But secondly, the sheer volume of people in China and the sheer amount of growth and investment that the government is putting into 5G, you know, kind of tempers that initial feeling. I don't know how recently you guys have been in China. I was there in January. Actually, I left mainland China the day before they closed the border to Hong Kong when Corona started. So hopefully I wasn't agent zero, but you know, when you're there, you see it, you feel it in every train station, in every bus station, in every port that they're massively investing construction dollars into. This is a society that Chairman Xi, you know, wants to build, and all the provinces are so bought in. They really are. It's about that vision, and you know, China takes it very seriously. They understand that by following the trajectory that's currently in place, they will pass the United States very soon and be, you know, the number one, you know, global power, you know, by GDP, and they want to represent that with pride. So, you know, it's an obvious space for them to invest. And I think if you look at some of the innovators that are in China, it's very much around technology, looking at Tencent, looking at ARM, looking at Alibaba and the others. These guys are all in. So this is how I react to it when I hear the news. But this is super hot. It's super hot there, and they are, you know, going to be a better and better leader, you know, for the future. I can't tell you why the investments in the U.S. and Europe aren't as strong. It could be cultural. It could be, I don't know. What do you guys think? I've kind of accepted it as a given. I haven't really questioned why, you know, but just being there, you feel the ambition, right?
I'm almost thinking it's autocracy versus democracy. Single-minded, let's go for it, as opposed to, oh, should we?
No, it really is interesting. Like I see how the Western news covers China, and then when you're in China, when you experience it, it's so different, right? When I was there, I remember not having access to certain news sites or WhatsApp or Facebook or anything else, and it was kind of a relief. A lot of the poison that's created, you know, as a consequence of these platforms, all of a sudden it's tempered, and the air is cleaner. I mean, maybe not the actual air, but you know what I mean. And not only that, but people take a lot of pride in the government. They're really proud to be Chinese, really proud that their government is investing so much in their cities and creating so much jobs. And they look at these amazingly successful entrepreneurs and they're trying to emulate that. I mean, I was speaking to very successful people that were in mining and forestry and manufacturing and technology. And, you know, that's the dream, you know, to be a successful capitalist in this, you know, People's Republic of China. It really is quite something. So I know, you know, it is an autocracy, and you know, we always kind of swing the pendulum to a certain degree. But just being there, there's something in the air. So whenever the skies open back up, and you know, we're able to kind of get back into a more normal sense of exploring the world, you know, I encourage you guys to go out there and feel it too if you haven't.
I am having a lot of conversations where people ask me, like, where do you see Europe going? Where do you see the US going? China, it seems to be somehow clear. Africa, India, it seems to be like you get a feeling of what's happening there. The US, it's uncertainty. Europe, it's kind of the blockers, the decelerator. What's your take? What's your opinion?
Look, I think when I first started examining this this view, I don't know if you guys have read Zero to One by Peter Thiel, the famous Peter Thiel, and he goes into these cultural differences in that somehow, at least in the West, or maybe it was specifically the US, I can't exactly recall, that there's this theme of making an educational setting where students have an all-around education. A little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit here, a little bit there, but no. Don't commit. Don't become an expert at something. Just be well-rounded and eventually become a consultant, become this, become that, join the crew of professional services. Whereas, this is very, very different from, Europe's culture, where you don't have to do 4 years of undergrad and then maybe go to law school. You pick a track, you become an expert, and you start contributing to society and, down that route. And if you change your mind, you haven't already poured 14 years into becoming well-rounded before you do something. I'm exaggerating, of course. And I would say China is more similar to Europe in that respect. You don't just dip your toe in the water. You make a choice, you give it a go, and you commit. If I'm speaking out of line, I've lived for a brief time in Prague. I spent, quite a lot of time here in Israel. I grew up in good old Houston, Texas. So my cowboy hats are in the other room. But, this is the view that has kind of resonated with me in accepting, how these differences, have resonated. I don't know how you guys feel about that. It'd be great to get your response, your thoughts.
I've read somewhere that it basically translates into one sentence or like phrase, hungry run faster. And that is probably something horrible to say, but Europe, with such a long history of dominating the world, has really fell asleep and is very comfortable in where it is now, based on that argument. And I kind of buy into it because really, like, being from Lithuania, we're from Baltic states, right? So we were part of Russia for a very long time. And I have lived in London for 5 years and like spent some time in the US. And obviously, many people innovate and create amazing companies and care about sustainability, like what Austria is doing is amazing. But we're like, in the Baltics, we tend to pick up tools without rules much quicker and easier, and come up with solutions to problems that are completely out of the box and potentially would not be even considered in societies that have not been in part of the Soviet Union and were not deprived from a lot of goods and wellness and accessibility to things. And especially like my city, even like our capital says that people from your city are very like business minded and are very like much jumping into any opportunities. And that is true. And I really attribute that to the fact that until 1992, we couldn't have bananas in the store. Like, I mean, we had caviar because obviously Russia has access to, the Northern Sea, but like bananas, like oranges and those things were not something that you could easily get. And I think the same is in China, I guess. It kind of, once you get access, you want so much and much more of it, and you're ready to innovate and do like skip some steps of our development and just jump on it much quicker, at least.
I like how you put that. I might offer an adjustment to that though. People, at least here in the Israeli office, joke that this is why the Finnish and the Israelis get along so well, because it's a very similar way of thinking and approaching business problems. But in China, I would say it might be a bit different there. There is not the same level, and I don't mean to say this, for this to be taken the wrong way, but there really isn't the same, let's call it, culture of critical thinking. The leaders, of enterprises in China, they do have this, but I would say that the working population, even despite how brilliant you might be as an investment banker, as an engineer, whatever, if you have a job, you know, you do what you can to do that job. It's less about challenging ideas. It's less about giving feedback and input that way. And by the way, you know, these aren't, a lot of these views are developed, you know, by speaking to my friends in China. And one of the benefits of my MBA program, I went to Columbia in New York, it was very international. The top 3 international countries represented, you know, were China, Korea, and India, which is great because you got to go to fun weddings all around the world, you know, but you also get to sit with your friends and colleagues and talk about things like this and, you know, diagnose certain societal norms and different cultural implications of why society is progressing as it is. And the lack of critical thinking, I would say en masse, is what the big difference is between, you know, China and the Baltics. But they're following orders really well. They're executing really well. And it's very much yes, boss.
Well, I guess if you look at the ratio of people who critically think, you know, across countries, because China can afford to have so many, you know, like on such a big population, because still there are some people who do create those innovations, right, and lead that. So it's just, yeah, I had the question yesterday, what makes a difference in terms of how critical thinking applies to different people? But that's, yeah, I don't want to jump in.
No, but even if you look at the pharma companies in China, if you look at the top 10, only one has a, let's say, a traditional R&D function as we know it. The others are very much focused on reverse engineering and taking what's been, you know, done out west and applying it to China. It's a totally different way of doing business, but they've run the numbers, they've calculated the return on investment, and this gives them a nice ROI. So this is it's just a different way of doing things.
And I wonder whether that may change as well quickly in the future. I mean, I remember I've done quite a bit of work in China over decades. And my first trip to China was about 20 years ago. And I was running a seminar with a UK organization that was looking to build relationships with China. And so there were a number of participants from China on there. And first of all, the experience then, it was very, very different in terms of technology compared to where the Western countries were for sure. And then, you know, every 2 or 3 years, I've been having other projects with different clients. And the last couple of times I've been back, clearly, you know, enormous progress. And so in terms of the acceleration of technology and general societal development, I guess, apart from perhaps the humanitarian side, it's been huge. The other thing I noticed, there were 2 things that I think relate to this conversation. One is that back then, we had to have simultaneous translators for the Chinese audience. Nobody spoke any English. The last couple of times, they're all pretty good in terms of English language. And I don't think it's just happens to be, okay, a statistical error in terms of the group that I was involved in. And so that was one thing, because once you have access to English thinking, English speaking, documentation, whatever it is, management thinking, it tends to be a lot of in English, then that may help. And the other is the thirst for knowledge. And I think this is building to critical thinking. And it may link to the language capability, but what I found the last couple of times is that there's enormous thirst for knowledge, a lot more questioning of, you know, what was being said, discussed than there was in the past. So I wonder whether the millennial generation and the sort of Generation Z will buck that trend in China. And, you know, I guess time will tell, but I suspect it will. No,
it's great. No, it's great insights, and also something to keep in mind. You know, I know that people are often asking, how are things in the US? And I'm like, well, you know, if you compare Texas and Vermont, you know, or how are things in Europe? Well, if you compare, you know, Monaco and I don't know, Moldova, like it's how do you even have the conversation? And within China, I mean, we're talking about, you know, tens of provinces. We're talking about over 50 different ethnicities, not simply Chinese. And whether you're in northeastern China or the southern, you know, China, close to Hong Kong or out west, I would say there's still a nice amount of variance there. And by the way, I had terrible luck. by finding people to speak English with me in most of China. It was mainly in Hong Kong that I was able to have real conversations like that. But I was, even this year, terribly dependent on translators. And I spent all of January, all of August, all of October there.
That's true. It depends if they're working for a Western organization, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. That's a very good point.
I think I could talk about this cultural difference for ages, but I really want to come back to the 5G topic a little bit and be that kind of, elephant in the room. Obviously, we have a lot of press that is covering the benefits of 5G. And then on the other hand, we have some scientists and a lot of press, kind of all these conspiracy theories about the negative side of 5G. What is your take on it? The negative side.
The negative side of 5G, all the conspiracies, I would say, are pretty much, should all be debunked from the ones that I've read. Very, very conspiracy, but the way that it still contributes from us societally, taking us away from the real world and even having us more entrenched in this virtual world, I think that's the tough, really the tough part. It's like a Black Mirror episode almost. I catch a lot of flack from my friends, that I shut down all my devices from Friday night to Saturday night for Shabbat. Thank goodness I do. I don't think that this was like the idea when the Torah was written, whenever that was written. But it's a nice way to kind of never go too far down the rabbit hole. That is what I think is to be the biggest challenging aspect of 5G. Maybe on top of that, with so many network events happening and being processed, because of 5G, it will contribute so much, to the learning powers and awareness of AI and robotics that, you start to go down that rabbit hole of, the machines versus man. And as Stephen Hawking said, at Web Summit 3 years ago, AI will either be the best or worst thing to happen in society. It's up to us to do it responsibly. And I couldn't agree more.
There's a book called Nova Scene. I really highly recommend reading it. It's about the, living in symbiosis with AI and yeah.
How do you spell it?
Nova Scene, NOVASCE. Sorry, no. Maybe I can just find the link and share it with you.
Great.
Put it in the chat.
Yeah, that totally. Yeah, it's super, super, super good book. Really coming from many different aspects of life, quantum physics, and even like God in some realm. Yeah, it's a completely it's not a scary story about AI and humans living together.
It's interesting you bring that up because I had a conversation. I think is Johan still here? Can't see you on there. I think we were talking about sort of, because I work in virtual reality and a bit more so now, like looking at augmented reality. And what we were just talking about then kind of relates to what I've been thinking about a lot, which is the sort of the romanticism, over romanticism of VR and people sort of getting lost in virtual worlds. And now I'm more so looking at like, okay, well, how can we use virtual reality, to actually, when you take the headset off, that's serving you for a certain reason. So I'm looking at like therapy in virtual reality now is a big one, with everyone being remote, like art therapy sort of project. I'm working on someone there with that. But yeah, like the sort of idea, I think I was talking to Johan about the idea that, or the belief that we're already in one level of virtual reality. And that was a big thing when the first sort of virtual reality social platform I used was High Fidelity, and the sort of CEO, the founder of High Fidelity was Philip Rosedale, who founded Second Life, which was like a platform that's been around for quite a while. But it's obviously not using sort of head-mounted displays because it's all 2D or desktop mode. And it's interesting because the first thing that got me into it was an interview where he was talking about the idea of like sort of being in a very advanced computer system already being into sort of one level of virtual reality already. But yeah, it's very much what you're saying, like Black Mirror sort of thinking about it. So so yeah, for me now, it's very much like, this is why I'm looking at augmented reality now as well, because I'm kind of like, well, how can that sort of, you know, with augmented reality, it seems more like a practical like way to fit it in, like to solve problems and issues in the real world without sort of just jumping away from them. But I was, because we were talking earlier as well about sort of competition, and I was interested to get your sort of take on, you know, Facebook and sort of their monopoly at the moment on virtual reality. And, you know, and also as well, I was thinking about sort of Vodafone and bringing an augmented reality device, Nreal, to Europe. That was a recent thing I was reading about. But just to wanted to get your take on sort of what Nokia are doing in terms of if there's any competition there or anything happening with hardware in the area of virtual reality or augmented reality.
But we really don't engage so much with Facebook, I would say. But you know, Vodafone, like this is one of our biggest customers, and you know, they are quite innovative. I mean, if you look at these service providers that have, you know, traditionally been in telecom, you have 2,000 in the world. You have 800 registered with the GSMA and then 1,200 MVNOs. It's like, wow, we have 200 countries and 2,000 players, and so everyone is innovating in their own ways. And Vodafone is, I would say, they have so many vectors and they're experimenting so much, which is the way to go. You know, this is how an aspiring tech company behaves, right? So I think they're in a let's say perpetual testing mode until something works, and then, you know, they put their foot on the brakes. They launched their first blockchain offering this year, or their first distributed ledger offering this year. Who would have thought that Vodafone's doing this, right? But anyway, you know, when we speak about virtual reality, it's less on the application side and more on the enabling side. So if we're going to do this, we need systems in place to facilitate it happening. We need you know, analytics, insights, intelligence that can help optimize this even better. Or hey, we need to make money from this. You know, we're investing so much, and being cool is one thing, but you know, how can we make this a net positive investment, you know, for us as a business? So these are the kind of enablers that we work together on. It's less on the application side, but yeah, no, but it's a great point, and it'd be great to hear more about what you're thinking and what you're doing, because you sound quite passionate about it.
Yeah, I was saying earlier, like when I first got into virtual reality, it was kind of a bit sort of overly romantic, and it still is for a lot of people, with people looking at films like Ready Player One and kind of going, oh, it's nowhere near there. But yeah, my area is virtual reality social platforms, and that's a very interesting space, and sort of having more like talks with companies that are looking to market on these platforms. And there's sort of just every day, it seems like a new platform pops up, virtual reality social platform. Or, you know, as I said, a sort of remote working tool, which is works similar to a virtual reality social platform, but just sort of one environment that people meet up in. But yeah, it's a very interesting space at the moment. And it's interesting because it went from developers of these platforms paying people to come onto their platforms for their actual financial opportunities for people who have spent the time on, like myself, who have spent the time on the platform with different companies looking to sort of have a virtual world built for conferences and events set up on these platforms. So, you know, and I imagine obviously sort of after COVID, everything, you know, people are going out more, that will probably slow down a bit, but I actually think it will still keep, you know, going pretty strong, because people are looking at you know, full remote working solutions now, because with people working remotely, a lot of companies are realizing they can get away with that. They don't need everyone to be, you know, in the office. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with the space afterwards. But
Totally.
Niall asked, how does Nokia see SpaceX Starlink project?
Well, personally, if Elon Musk's name is associated with it, I can only assume it's gonna be amazing. You know, when it comes to you know, when it comes to space, you know, we work with NASA. Right now, we're rolling out a 4G network for the moon. It's weird saying it, you know. I feel like it's that episode in Dumb and Dumber when Jim Carrey comes out saying, "Guys, we landed on the moon." It's, you know, it's decades later, but I'm not sure if there's a Nokia view on Starlink, but we're definitely, you know, consuming the news and paying close attention to what these amazing, you know, entrepreneurs like Elon Musk are doing.
No, thank you so much. I really enjoyed that conversation. We're getting pretty close to the end of the hour. That was great. I'd like to connect you with everyone so you can all take the conversation from there. I also recorded the session. I hope that's okay for you. It feels like there's no Nokia internal material in it. It's up to you to just share it with the participant or keep it publicly on the channel of the Silicon Valley Inspiration Tours so everyone can revisit it.
Yeah, sure. And thanks for connecting me in the conversations. I feel like I have a ton to learn from you guys, you know, for future conversations. Come to Israel when the skies open up. Come to the Nokia patio. We'll play some basketball, some snooker. We'll have a nice view of the rolling hills of our very tiny country. And yeah.
I'll definitely do it. There is a tour in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem in the planning. It just depends on when traveling is back to close to normal. I guess it's going to be a new normal. Looking forward to meeting you in person. Thank you so much. That was great.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
very much.
Thank you very much.
Likewise.